Nah, there you go. Craig's involved.
Hi, Craig.
I really want them to update him so he says hi.
Yeah.
Because he just says now recording. I want him to have the ability to say hi.
Hey, guys, what's up? I'm Craig. I'm your record bot.
Yeah, just I just feel it feels like I'm like got a third wheel. It just feels awkward now.
Yeah, because you see his AVI and you're like, he's not saying anything. He's got a microphone and, on the
Yeah,
picture.
exactly. Do you think that microphone's not even plugged in?
Probably not.
No. Okay. Well, I'm ready to go on your.
Yeah, I'm good.
Welcome to the Tiger Nexus Podcast, a place where you'll find interviews with content creators and geeks alike. Your host, Tiger, has delved upon the Nexus and found interesting content creators and geeks of all fandoms. This podcast is connected to the Zero Hero Network. And now we dive in with another episode!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tiger Nexus podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Tiger, and welcome to Movie Dumpster Dive. This is a little sub-series on the podcast where we break down movies of all different types. This was created by my co-host of the sub-series, Ben Baker. Hello, bro, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Son's gone back to school now after 6 weeks of summer break. So
Nice.
I'm now back into some form of routine, but that also means I have to wake up at 10 to 7 every morning, so my body is not liking the fact that I've now got some form of sleep schedule.
Yeah, I just pretend like I don't. Sometimes I'll wake up or get up or stay up late. Sometimes I'm in bed early. It just kind of how I feel. I wake up the same time every day because I've got some sleep issues. So it's like I'm like the Hulk where he's always angry. Well, I'm always tired, so it works.
Yeah, I have ADHD brain, so like even if I went to bed at a reasonable time, I have to wind down first. So like me going to bed does not mean I'm going to sleep. Like I'm laying in bed for easily half an hour to maybe an hour sometimes.
That's me sometimes. So sometimes I'll just turn on my TV and I'll lay down, and then all of a sudden, like 10 minutes, I'm like turning the TV off, and then I'm out. It's weird.
Yeah, fair. Well, today, we are talking about the Power Rangers movie that came out in 2017, and I'm just gonna warn everyone listening, if you think this is gonna be an hour of us, completely ripping the shit into this movie, you're listening to the wrong podcast, I'm afraid, because, me and Ben, don't actually find this movie that bad. We do have some good highlights. We both have enjoyed this movie in the past. So I have some minor nitpicks that we'll get into later. But honestly, I didn't. I find the 2017 movie pretty good. Actually, like I said, there is some issues, but I don't. I don't see all of the complaints that everyone else online has stated. I don't see it. But Ben, let's go to you. Let's see what you think of the Power Rangers movie that came out in 2017.
I actually really enjoyed it. When sorry, that was my daughter shutting the door. But no, I liked it. I thought it was, there's again, like you said, you got some nitpicks. I got some nitpicks, but overall, it was enjoyable. I liked the way they presented it. I didn't mind that they didn't become Power Rangers till later on. I enjoy origin stories. So, and this is a different take on Power Rangers. To me, it didn't need to be Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from 1993, and they didn't need to be goody two shoes. They just needed to have their own stories, and it made sense. And they gelled together and everything. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, exactly the same. It's got some seriousness to it, but it's not too serious that kids can't still enjoy it, because that's the whole point. Obviously, Power Rangers is aimed for kids. It has this undertone of more realistic, because no offense, sure, I'm not saying all these people can hang out and become friends. I'm not saying that can't happen. I'm sure that's happened in the past, but this kind of brings more realistic issues with each character. Each one's a bit different from how we know them from the comics and the TV shows, which is great. And like you said, it's an origin story. It's more about the character development and the lore behind it. We learn more about Zordon and Rita in this. We learn more about how, why the power coins were where they are, and, all different types of stuff. It's not just, oh, by the way, we need 5 teenagers, Alpha, let's go pick up some 5 random teenagers. It's not that at all. There's conflict as well, between the Rangers themselves, between Rita, with Zordon, there's actually conflict between, we have this whole debate between Jason and Zordon, which I actually really enjoyed the fact that Zordon's not just a floaty dude in a tube. He's actually got some emotion. He's got some, flaws. He's not perfect, and I like that. I like the fact that this isn't just your average Power Ranger show, which is like, hey, these are 5 kids who can, morph and kick some ass. It's actually got some realism, I think is the wrong word I'm looking for, but that's the word I'm going with.
Well, yeah, and I think that's what I liked about it. It was more real take, and it was the same characters. I know a lot of people have issues with it being the same characters, but in my opinion, if it was completely different characters that they made up for this one, then it's just a Power Ranger fan film and not really Power Rangers per se. If you're using the Dinozords and Zordon and all that stuff, but yeah, I agree with you on that. I like the way they did Zordon and Alpha. And to an extent, Rita, I didn't care for how they did Goldar, but I'm sure we'll get into that later. Yeah, I like the whole presentation, and I liked the heart in it. Like, it had heart. Billy's probably the best character in the movie. He's the heart of the Power Rangers here, and in a sense, he's been the heart of the Power Rangers since the beginning, because he was, for a while, he was one of the longest running characters in the show. Yeah, it was different. Probably not what people wanted in a quote unquote, remake of Power Rangers, but it was exactly what I kind of wanted, outside of a few things here or there.
Yeah, the way I see it, the multiverse exists. The multiverse
Yes.
is nothing new nowadays. And it's not always going to be exactly what you want. I actually watched one of my TikTok buddies, which we actually reconnected the other day. I'm really glad we did. He's all into like different movies and stuff. He's a movie TikToker, and he actually did a video today where he said that art is subjective. It's up to the eyes of the beholder. You can't, just because someone paints or draws or makes a movie or whatever in one way, you can't say it's, not right or it's not correct. And I feel like this movie falls under the umbrella completely, because it's, yeah, sure, the OG die-hard MMPR fans, I know people who are massively MMPR fans. They don't really watch the newer seasons, whatever, have said they've enjoyed this movie. But I've also spoken to diehard MMPR fans who have said that this movie is absolutely terrible. And so, like, it's not going to be liked by everybody, and that's fine. That's cool. But me personally, I like Elseworld stories, and I like when things get a different take, as long as it's done well. And I feel like this was done well. It's like you said, it's an origin story. It's more about the characters than anything else. And a lot of times throughout the 30 years of Power Rangers we had, there's always one, but sometimes there's 2 Rangers that do not get anything. They don't get lore or backstory or family history or anything. Pretty much every season has one ranger that just gets fuck all. And this movie tried to do something with everybody. You get at least a scene with everybody. You learn something from every character. And sure, they're not Power Rangers for long. That is a big complaint, and I personally would have loved to see them in the suits longer, but that's fine because Rita Repulsa steals the show. I think she's done incredibly well in this. She's got more lore with Zordon. There's backstory there. She's done really creepy. She actually is really creepy in this. The first time we see her, where she's not Rita Repulsa yet, but she's not dead. She's kind of in between that phase of being power drained. She needs, energy and gold and stuff. I think that is one of the most creepiest scenes ever, bro. When she's in is it a jewelry store she's in?
Yeah.
That scene is freaky and I love it. She's done really well done. The suit looks really cool. The fact that, she was the Green Ranger and her armor is kind of based, is kind of the broken down Power Ranger suit looks really cool. Proper creepy character. Love the way they did her. Rita in the show, sure, she's a good villain. She's fun, but we don't get enough of her as an actual villain. She doesn't fight the Rangers or anything. This Rita kicks ass. She literally, the Rangers want to fight Rita in human form, which is a dumb move, but it's a good story development arc for the characters, and Rita whoops some serious ass, man. She goes ham on all 5 of them, and she literally kills Billy, and it's just, she's such a good villain. Sure, Goldar is a bit dumb. I agree with you there. Goldar is just what the fuck was that? But I have a but here. It's one of those things where if you take away what it's meant to be, it's a cool idea. If it wasn't Goldar, if it wasn't called Goldar, if that wasn't meant to be Goldar and it's just this big titan of gold that Rita merges with, it would have been sick as all flying fuck. But because that is air quote Goldar, it's what the fuck is that?
That's true. But still, I still would have liked to see some sort of, maybe they just didn't want to incorporate a monster looking thing, even though Rita's an alien and all that. And the putties are made of rock, so everything's still kind of earthbound as far as she looks human. The putties are rocks, blah blah blah. And then you have this big, huge werewolf looking thing with wings. But to go back on the point of where Elseworld and all that kind of stuff, I know a lot of that's where a lot of people get tripped up with this movie. And that's where a lot of comic book fans get tripped up with comic book movies because they want it to be exactly like the movie. I mean, exactly like the comic books, when comic books have different universes and different versions of the characters, and the movies are just different versions of those same characters. And why is it okay in the comics, but it's not okay in the movies to have a different version of those characters? And then I'm complaining about Goldar, which is in the same thing, but I don't want to say people are bad and I'm not with that, which I am, because that's the biggest nitpick for me. Is just the Goldar thing. There's other little ones, but with Rita, she was more down to earth, not down to earth character, I guess. She had more character than in the show. In the show, she's just this loudmouth witch that just hates the Power Rangers and always has headaches, and then that's literally her character in every episode. So, which we love her because it's Rita. She's from the original Power Rangers, but then again, there's not much to her until she puts a spell on Zed to fall in love with her, and then it ends up he was in love with her the whole time. So I like the way they did her a little bit different. little more fleshed out.
Yeah, I think she was well-handed, and so we have 5 Rangers, and it is Jason, Billy, Zach, Trini, and Kimberly, but they are different. Again, going to this Elseworld idea. Jason's now ex-football jockey who is a bit of a bad boy. He's a bit of a rebel. He's not your martial arts kid anymore. Billy is autistic. He's now a the quirky one, I guess is the right word. He's the fun. He's, like you said, he's the heart of the group. He's energetic. He's not sure he's not as shy as original Billy, but the very first time we see Jason and Billy meet, it's Jason defending Billy from a bully, and Jason's still got that pride and that passion to defend people. Absolutely still Jason, that is Jason to Jason's core, but this time round he's not, the perfect kid who does martial arts. He's a bit more of a rebel. He gets himself into trouble a lot. He's got a bit of a distant relationship with his dad. Billy's not the nerdy geeky kid with glasses on. He's now a black kid instead. Which is different, which a lot of people didn't like the whole race swapping thing, and I'm like, just get over yourselves, it's fine, Jesus Christ. In Kimberly's not your gymnastic girl anymore. She's the girl trying to make a statement in high school. She cuts her hair. That's one of the first things we see her do. She's basically trying to give the middle finger to all the other girls in high school without actually giving the middle finger, which I like the fact that she's a bit more edgy, I think is the right word. Zach is of Asian descent this time, and he's a caring son. He's got a very ill mother, and he looks after her, which is a lot different, massively different to what we see Zach in the TV show. And then Trini is got the same issues as Kimberly, but at home, where she distances herself from her family. She don't talk to them. She doesn't like talking to anyone really. I think she says she's gone to 3 different high schools in 2 years or 3 years or something like that. I think she says so. They've moved around a lot or something. And each character, over the course of the movie, Zach and Trini don't get a lot, compared to the other 3. But again, that happens in Power Rangers anyway. But each character is different. Very tropey, sure. These character tropes have been done 1,000 times. It's nothing new. But for Power Rangers, it is. And, they're, like I said, they're a bit more realistic. Because, not everyone has the perfect family. Not everyone has their parents still together. And I actually watched someone talk about this movie, and they actually made a very good point where we have an autistic kid, and he's not a mad genius or represented in a really cool, fun, flashy way, which could be kind of considered a bit rude or anything. It just makes him a bit more quirky than the other 4 characters. That's literally it. It was actually really represented in a really good, plausible manner, and I respect them for making Billy in that way.
Yeah, Billy basically he is smart, but not a mad scientist type of thing. He seems to only know how to accidentally blow things up. Yeah. I do have some qualms with the Trini character, but that's mostly because of me as a dad who wants to know how my daughter's doing and what's going on with her, and I just want her to communicate with her life. And then Trini just seems to not want to. In this movie, she makes it seem like her parents just don't care about her when watching the movie. That's not the case. Yeah, they might have some issues, with all parents do, but they just want, without communication, how are your parents supposed to be there for you the way you want them to be there if you don't communicate that? Now, if you're a teenager watching the movie, you can be like, yeah, I feel what Trini's feeling, and as a parent, because I was already a parent when this movie came out, I'm like, what's her deal? Just talk to her parents. They might not understand everything, but they'll, they still love her. But.
Yeah, I completely get that. This film came out 2 years before me coming a dad. And now that I am a dad, you know, okay, granted, my son isn't a teenager just yet, but I'm always making sure he's all right and trying to get him to talk to me and stuff. And like, you know, communication is key. It just in general, no matter what the case is, you know, in every single aspect of life, communication is key. And yeah, to be fair, I feel like out of the 5 characters, I feel like Trini's the one that I just want to point at, you know, and just grab her by the shoulders and give her a little shake and go, "Oi, talk to your parents, you muppet," you know. Out of the out of the 5 characters. But again, I think, you know, uh, she's still cool. She's still a fun character. What was your thoughts on the suit designs? Because I know that's like one of the biggest like insults people take from the movie is that they don't look like Power Rangers.
So that is one of my issues. Is just the design of the suits. Like I get it. You know, you can't have the spandex. And they still try to. They still try to, you know, give homage to the original with the diamonds and everything, and I think the helmets might have like their Zord on there, but their visors like the whole thing. I, I think it grows on you with the movie, but it's still it's one of those where I know it's a nitpick where I'm like I don't like the way that looks, but I don't know how they could have made it better at the same time. So I'm like I'll just live with it because I liked most everything else. The sword designs, that's also an issue that I have, but that's since we're not getting sequels, it's nothing we can really be like, well, they could have done that better because now we have to see this every movie that they get. Um, so with the one-off, it is what it is. But yeah, I don't know how that would have been better except for I don't know. Yeah, that's just one of my small nitpicks of the movie.
So with the swords, I'll completely agree that I honestly have all designs, you know, if you're just going off looks and how things are portrayed, Goldar and the Zords are my 2 like biggest letdowns. Again, if that is Goldar, then that's lame as fuck. If it wasn't Goldar and it was just some big golden titan thing she makes, then cool, that's fair. You know, but because that is Goldar, it's just like, what the fuck are you doing? The Zords do not look like dinosaurs.
No, the
Other than
Mastodon's got like 6, 8 legs. I don't know. It's like
yeah,
I was talking to Kevlock. He's on um my podcast. I haven't in the recording of this. I haven't put that out yet though. But he was like, it's just it's like a beetle. It's not a mastodon because I don't think it even has a trunk or anything. I think it's just like a big just monster with like 6 legs.
yeah. It's so like I think the only one you can look at and go, okay, I can see that some form of dinosaur is the Red Ranger's Tyrannosaurus sword. That's literally the only one that looks some form of, you know, you look at it long enough, you can go, okay, I can kind of see why someone may think that's a T-Rex. But none of them look like dinosaurs. None of them look like how they should. It's really bizarre. I do not get it. Like, it's just so random.
Yeah, I wish they would have designed them maybe a little bit more, not like the show, but like how they come together, because they just kind of just redesigned the whole thing, not just redesign each Zord, but even how the Zords came together. But then again, that's still a nitpick, but it's just I don't know. It's maybe in Eltar or wherever you know the this version of Power Rangers were originally from, that their dinosaurs looked similar to our dinosaurs, but they were not the same dinosaurs. And that's the only way I could maybe do it, because they were like alien dinosaurs, and almost like watching that movie 65 with Adam Driver, where the dinosaurs really didn't look much like they looked like alien dinosaurs, or the new Jurassic World with the D-Rex that looked like a Rancor more than it looked like a dinosaur.
I will say this, as much as I don't like the Zords, I do like the fight scene between Goldar and the Zords because Goldar goes ham on them, and like they actually have to learn how to like not only work together but how to drive their Zords. And again, the Megazord doesn't look great, but again, I will say I do like the fact that the very first time the Megazord, like we see the Megazord on screen, they fall over. They don't know how to control this thing, and it's a nice change compared to the TV show where it's a case of, hey, I get to drive this gigantic mechanized machine thing perfectly.
Well, yeah, in the show, once they got their powers, it's almost like they now all of a sudden they knew how to fight. They knew how to control. I think it was just the morphing grid, basically just controlled all that. So they already knew how to do it once they got their powers. Here, I think that's one thing I liked about this is with the show. I love the show, and the show's better, because it's the OG. But in the show, they didn't have to really learn to get along. They already got along. They were already best friends. Most of them were already best friends. They didn't have to learn how to use their powers. They just had to accept the powers, and then all of a sudden they knew how to do everything. So it was a nice, refreshing little change of they had to learn along with it rather than just because if it was like the show, what people wanted, where they were in the suits more, and that means once they got their coin and once they knew, found Zordon and Alpha, that now all of a sudden everything's all hunky dory and they're fighting everything. And where's the challenge?
Yeah, see, this is why I don't mind. Like, don't get me wrong, I would like to see them in the suits a bit more, or just at least like for just longer. In like let's say the film had like an extra like 10 minutes of fight footage or something, that's what I would have wanted. But like the fact that there's a training montage, there's like a whole scene where like you see the Rangers training, fighting, learning how to deal with the putties and things like that, using the holograms and things. Love that. When they first get their power coins, they kind of go through this like Spider-Man X-Men type thingy where like Jason accidentally breaks the sink and the bully tries to headbutt Billy and he ends up knocking himself out. They're all stronger and stuff, and you get the scene where like they jump over the cliff, over the ledge, and they kind of jump the distance and they land on the other side, and they're stronger and things. It just, again, I like the whole Elseworld stuff. I like it when things are done just differently, as long as it's good and it's done in a good way. I don't mind that. And again, this is where I like it because you get this. They have to train. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They don't. They're not martial artists. They're not gymnastics. They don't do any of this. Like the OG. Any of the Rangers do. So they have to learn. They have to train. They have to practice, and you get to see that. And you get to see them going from being shocked that, oh my god, I just broke the corner of the sink by accident, to when they do more, finally it's like, okay, we've actually seen them go from holy fuck I can do this to yeah, let's kick some ass, and you actually get to see that progression, and it's a nice breath of fresh air.
Well, and I've heard in the last several years, I've heard a lot of whenever Power Rangers was on TV, this is back when like Ninja Steel and all that was on TV, and a lot of people's issues with the newer seasons was there was not enough of the Power Rangers outside of their suits. It was just Sentai footage. They wanted to see less of the Sentai footage, more of the characters. And then with this movie, some of the same people that were complaining that there was too much of the Sentai footage wanted more of essentially what the suits and everything. So maybe as a result of some of that, they made it more of the characters rather than just the action. But if we got a second movie, which I really wish we would have gotten a second movie, I'm pretty sure that would have had a lot of action.
Yeah, I do wish this got a second movie, even if it was just one more. You know, they
Yeah.
hinted at Tommy in the end
Mhm.
credit scene. So like, even if they just did Tommy in a movie, that'd been fine. I would have been happy with just that. What do you think of the design of the power coins? Because that's like completely different to, again, you know, going off their suits and their Zords and things. You know, the power coin themselves are also very different. They're like crystal, but they're also gold at the same time. They're kind of like alien looking, not just your basic generic golden coin with an engraving in it.
That's another one of those things where it's basically it was just kind of like blah. Yeah, it was just like a round little crystal thing with the color on the inside. And I think the ones in the movie were just that. I think the toy versions, because they had the actual morpher when they didn't have a morpher in the movie, the coins did have like a faint image of the Zord animal in there, but I don't think that was the intent in the movie. Um, so it didn't really resemble a coin per se. It was just like it's a little smooth
Trinket.
rock. Yeah. So, but Zordon did call it a coin because I watched it this morning, and he's like, "Where are the power coins?" I'm like, "Those are. If that's a coin, then I guess cool."
I mean,
But
he's an alien. I mean, to him,
that's true. It's an alien
his
coin.
you know, his currency could be like massive bricks. You know, we don't know.
Yeah, they could wipe their butt with three seashells. Who knows?
Exactly. You know, so we
So
can't judge there. Um, But one thing I have to disagree with you on is the suits. I'm not saying that I'm in love with them. There is a few things I would change. But I actually do really like the suits. I like the armor kind of like detailing. I love the glowing light, like blue energy light thing in the chest in the center. I think that's really cool. The helmets is what throws me off. That's the bit I don't like. Is the helmets? It's they look like they're really big on them. It looks a bit out of proportion. I don't know. It just looks like they'd be really heavy. Like, you know, it looks like the backs are like gonna overtopple themselves or something. It kind of looks like when someone tries to put on the Z. You can buy the Z head, helmet, the Z
yeah,
head.
that's
It looks,
huge.
yeah, it looks like when people try to wear that. That's what the helmets look like to me when they morph. But other than my little nitpick with the helmet design, the rest of the suit I do really like. And I know for a fact that so many people don't like the suits, but I like being the odd one out. I do not care. I do not care.
Well, even though I don't care for them, again, I don't know how you would have made it better than how they did. So I think they just are like, this is the best we got. No one's gonna like no matter what we do. So here, there's something. It might be cool, and they made them like. And it was kind of like I didn't mind the how they went on them, like it was almost like Iron Man and his micro bots or whatever. I did like that. That made a little more sense since everything's inside of them per se, rather than just somehow magic they have a suit on. I did think that was a good way to for them to get the suits.
Mm. No, I completely agree. The only thing that always like baffled me about that though is when they all finally morph, they have to stand on their little like individual little pedestal like thing, that wraps over them. Yet Billy can morph by himself early in the movie.
Yeah, when I was
Huh?
watching it today, I was like, well, I thought they could morph without all that, unless that was just while they were getting the power to morph, that just I don't know. I can't. I'm trying to make it make sense. But I think it was just them. Hey, let's make this cool looking shot of them coming together to morph, rather than them just individually just figure it out, type of thing.
See, the only way that I can, like, me being a story writer myself and everything, the only thing I can think of is when Billy did it, it was kind of like a panic response. That's why the suit just magically appears on him. It's kind of like maybe the suit automatically assumed like he's in danger, but then when all the team morph, that's how they would naturally morph without the whole panic response. That's the only thing I can think of in my head. Like,
Well, I'm sure there's still an intention to, not morph like that every time, like where they can morph out in the open, not just in the shower. That was the Zach line, but
yeah.
I think it was just for them to just, hey, let's do a cool team shot of them morphing here in with this emotional moment, because it's that emotional moment right after Zordon gave up coming back, and then reviving Billy. So it just, I guess, made sense at the moment in the story to have them morph right then and there, instead of go out and then figure it out when they try to go after Rita.
The
More emotional way of morphing, I guess.
That's something that I really enjoyed about this as well, is Zordon had more to him than just being the, floaty head guy that, needs 5 teenagers. He had a goal. He wanted to come back. He wanted to, be the Red Ranger and, kind of stop Rita. He wanted, to do more than just be the mentor character. And I like the fact that there's a conflict with Zordon now. Billy dies, and it's either revive Billy or come back himself. And Zordon technically, in a way, had a very small character arc. He learned to trust these 5 teenagers that he doesn't know. He has to accept the fact that the coins picked these 5 random kids. And so, like, there's more to Zordon. What did you think of the way they designed him? He's not a floaty head in a tube. He's like a weird moving wall.
I actually thought that made a lot of sense in it. I don't really understand the physics of him being a person, and then now his mind's in the ship, and then all that stuff. I don't know if Morphin Grid can explain all that stuff away, but I like the way they did it, because they did it basically like they, the show. He's a floating head, so you got to make him a floating head. If they would have done something differently, I think that would have been gone way too off on the deep end. But I think that they didn't go too crazy. Maybe a little safer when it comes with how they presented Zordon in there.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of is his consciousness uploaded to the ship or something. It's not like between Mighty Morphin all the way to in space. It was very confusing on how his tube worked. And how he was always in the same tube, and Zordon got captured and shit. Like, that was always kind of never explained. So I like the fact that we have a designated explanation of this is why Zordon's stuck in a wall. It does kind of look like one of those weird toy things you can buy, where you can put your hand or your face in it, and it kind of like takes the shape of it. It does look like one of them, I will admit, but it fits the tone of the movie. The way the ship looks is very dark, and silvers and greys. Alpha's a bit more alien robot looking, more than kid robot looking. The suits and stuff, it does match the rest of the tone of the movie, so I'll give it that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's a bit of an odd choice, and like you said, it's a bit of a safe choice. But again, we do have some form of explanation this time around. And there's more of a character to him, and he's also played by a really good actor. I have to give props where props are due. The casting choices for this movie is elite. So the actors and actresses for this movie are phenomenal.
Yeah, I think they got it right with this one. Even though when the movie came out, outside of Bryan Cranston and I don't even know why I forgot the guy who played Alpha, and Elizabeth Banks, like I didn't know any of those actors. Well, I guess I knew um, Trini because she was a singer back like you know 10, 15 years before whatever. Um, Maybe not that long before that because it's 2017, maybe 5 years before. I don't remember. So JoJo, I guess, is that her name? No. Who's Trini? Sorry, I'm mixing up these pop stars.
Trini is, let's find out real quick, she. Trini is played by Becky G.
Yeah, okay, Becky G. Yeah, she was like a pop star. Yeah, and
Yeah,
stuff. But
she's an American singer and actress.
yeah, but the other three, four, I did not know. But they played it well. They did it well. And yeah, I don't even know why I forgot the name of the guy that's Alpha 5. He was on Saturday Night Live. He's actually from my hometown, so I don't know why I forgot his name. Crap.
The guy who plays Alpha is Bill Hader?
Yeah, Bill Hader. Yes.
So one thing I also like as well, going back to the lore and the fact that things are explained, is there's an explanation to the origin of Power Rangers in this universe, because we've always known throughout the TV shows that the teams we've seen aren't the only teams. There's alien planets with other teams. There was, in the comic books, they've kind of shown off like another team of Mighty Morphin Rangers back in like the 1970s or something like that. But like we know that in this movie, these 5 teenagers are actually technically the second team, because obviously we know Zordon was a ranger. We saw him get his ass whooped in the very beginning of the movie. So like we know that these are technically the second generation of Power Rangers, which I liked a lot. The fact that we got a bit more concrete sort of like evidence.
Yeah. And they added a little bit more, or a little more, I guess, lore from the OG with going after the Zeo crystals, seeing that that's where that's going, just like in the original show. That's kind of what they were after. And so when Mighty Morphin ended, it became Zeo because of the Zeo crystals. So it made sense. And then it was added Krispy Kreme. So
yeah, that is like my only like take away my nitpick for designs, because like that's my biggest nitpick is just the way certain things look. Story wise, the way that the movie goes, that's my biggest nitpick. Is sure, product placements in every movie, let's be honest, nowadays, that's how things get funded, and things like this is how movies work. Some of them are very quick snippets of something. Sometimes it's just, hey, there's a car brand that gets blown up, or hey, this person's drinking from a Starbucks, whatever the case may be. Krispy Kreme is so heavily driven in the third act of this movie. It is absolutely stupid. It is so ridiculous, to the point they even had Rita Repulsa stood there in a Krispy Kreme when everything outside is happening and she's eating a donut.
yeah, I'm not one of those big opponents against product placement. Like I know people are like, oh, somebody's drinking a Pepsi, that's product placement. Well, if that was real life, you would be drinking a Pepsi too.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of some of these just made up brands in these movies because like they're just so they just feel like just a lower end brand of stuff we have in the real world. And if you put stuff that's in the real world like a Burger King or a McDonald's in the background, hey, this is the real world, because when I go outside, I see a McDonald's. I live 2 blocks from a McDonald's, so I eat pizza. Actually, I don't eat Pizza Hut, but because we don't have one here in town. But that stuff doesn't bother me. I know they kind of overdid it in this one, probably more than they do in most movies with the Krispy Kreme. But actually, probably because that's the only thing in the movie that is more of a product placement thing. So it kind of, maybe it sets you out of Angel Grove whenever nothing else in there is something that's similar to our world. But
I mean,
I didn't.
to be fair, again, this is also meant to be aimed at kids. Like, yeah, okay, adults can enjoy it. So, like, having a product placement like Krispy Kreme, it's donuts, it's something that kids would enjoy too. If they really hard sell the product placement, it would get kids be like, hey, mum, can I also go to Krispy Kreme? I want to be like Rita Repulsa. I want to be like the Power Rangers. Can I go to Krispy Kreme? So, like, it brings more attention. That's the whole point of a product placement, is to bring attention to these things. So I can see why, but again, it is just kind of a bit overdone.
Yeah, it might be overdone, but yeah. We never got to see the Zeo crystals, did we? Because they were underneath.
Yeah, we never see, like, if they did do a sequel, I'd obviously we knew Tommy would be in it, because obviously he was the end credit scene, like his name being called out. I would love to have seen the Zeo Crystal, but I also would love to see them get their, like, weapons, like, have it so, like, that's the next part of their training, is their weapons, or if they find their weapons or something. Like, in the Super Sentai counterpart to Mighty Morphin, they actually have to go get ordinary versions of the power weapons. They actually have to go on this quest and find them. And so, like, it'd be kind of cool if, like, in the second movie, the Rangers had to learn how to use their power. It's like, maybe ordinary fighting skills can't beat the bad guy or whatever. Maybe they needed the power cannon or something to defeat the second main villain or something. It would be kind of cool to that. Just to give if they're going to focus on Tommy, give the other characters something to do. So it'd be kind of cool if, like, the power weapons are a bit more involved, because obviously we did see Jason use a blade of some kind for a brief second. But they could have just said, oh, that's, like his side sword or something, because all Rangers have a team weapon, like a gun or a blaster or something like that. So they could have
he did return it at the end of the movie. He gave it back to Zordon, and Zordon's like, that's your sword. And he's like, I'll come back for it. So maybe that is his power sword, and maybe their weapons come out of their... It's almost like the same thing. Like, they had to learn to morph, and then they have to learn to use their weapons. And since he was a leader, he was the first one to get that.
I mean, yeah, okay, if that is officially his, like, power sword, then, maybe the other team members had to learn how to summon their weapons or find their weapons or something.
But there was a rumor, and I think if you watch it with subtitles at the end when they're like Tommy is spelled with an I at the end, which makes you think that their intent was that Tommy was going to be a girl instead of a male Tommy.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's interesting. I wonder how they would have done that then, because, like, again, writer brain, the very first thing my head goes to is something on the lines of, it's, a connection to Rita Repulsa, of some kind. Like, that's my first go-to. But yeah, no, that's interesting. Actually, I didn't actually pick that up, that it's spelt with an I.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is, and I know I was reading or watching things on it where people were saying that that was not where they were what you call it, where they would put out information on backstories by the movies. What is that called? I don't know. I get these stupid brain farts where they just put stuff out that's not supposed to be out yet. Leak. So it was kind of like a leak that they were going to make Tommy a girl. But
according to the Power Rangers wiki for Tommy Oliver of the 2017 movie, other than explaining the end credit scene, in the notes it does say Tommy's only appearance was an Easter egg of their jacket with the color indicating green with a Chinese dragon. The cast of the movie discussed that Tommy should be a girl. So even the cast,
That's where, yeah.
So I mean, I think 90% of the OG fans would have been really butthurt that if it was a girl. But again, I wouldn't have that much of an issue because again, I like Elseworlds. At the minute, I'm reading Power Rangers Prime, Absolute DC, and the new Ultimate Marvel. And I'm loving what I'm reading so far because I like when things are done differently. So I'm not saying I would love it, but I'd be intrigued and at least interested to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I was kind of, I don't know, I was kind of sad that they won it. They didn't, and I think this is probably one of the things that set in motion for Saban to sell Power Rangers off to Hasbro, which is turning out to be probably one of is worse than when he sold it to Disney. But yeah, I really wish that they would have at least tried to continue this, but I don't think the movie actually made as much money as they wanted it to make. Because I think it got decent reviews overall. But I just Saban's all about the money, and if there's not going to be enough money made, then he's not going to put money into it. So
yeah, that's the biggest issue is they're very money focused and toy focused. Obviously, they make most of their money through the toys and stuff. Hence why we keep getting Mighty Morphin things being done, because Mighty Morphin's obviously the OG. It gets it'll get the most money and all that stuff. So apparently, it's worldwide box office approximately made 142.5 million. However,
that's not a whole lot.
it was a disappointment because to make the film it was 110 million to 115, so it didn't actually make that much in comparison to how much it cost to actually make the movie. Okay, so before we wrap this up, if you could rate Power Rangers 2017, 1 being the absolutely worst movie you've ever seen, 10 being, it was absolutely phenomenal, you recommend it to everybody, you'll watch this 10 times over, where do you rank Power Rangers 2017?
I would probably, because it is enjoyable as a Power Rangers movie. But I do feel like if you're not interested in Power Rangers, you probably won't care for it. So I might put it in the 6.5 to 7 out of 10. It's enjoyable, but it's it's not the greatest thing. It's not the first Ghostbusters movie, which is the greatest movie of all time. But yeah.
So before I give my rating, I will say this. 2 years ago, my missus, who's never seen anything to do with Power Rangers, she only knows Power Rangers by my comics, the Funko Pops and action figures that she buys me. That's literally it. She's actually watched this film, and she enjoyed it as a person who's never seen Power Rangers. She actually thought it was pretty cool. And she's actually a big origin movie hater. She I've noticed watching the MCU with her, because we're now in phase 4. She doesn't do origin movies at all. She didn't like Spider-Man 1. She didn't like Iron Man 1 as much as she enjoyed Iron Man 2. She prefers Captain America 2 and 3 over Captain America 1. She just doesn't do origin movies. So for the fact that it is an origin movie, she actually enjoyed it. I thought I'd just put that out there. I'm
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to give this. Oh, I'm gonna say 7, but it's a low 7, so almost a 6.5. But I'm gonna say 7 because the casting, the story arcs, the story development, the attention to each character. Again, Trini and Zach don't get as much attention to the other three, but just welcome to having a cast where the main characters are more than like 2. That always kind of happens, especially in marriages. Rita Repulsa, it just overall is phenomenal. So like it has a lot going for it, and the reason why I'm deducting 3 points is just because like Goldar is just a diabolical mess. The Zords don't look like dinosaurs. Yeah, okay, you can make the argument that they're alien, but sorry, no, I don't accept that argument. And also like I said, yeah, okay, I like the suits, but the helmets are a bit funky. Just little nitpicks at like the way things are designed, but overall, the storytelling and stuff, the cast themselves, it definitely has more going for it. So I'm gonna say a 7, I think.
So we're basically just on par with each other on how we enjoyed it and what we liked about it, and because everything's kind of similar in our takes.
Yeah, I think the only thing we disagreed on was the suits, I believe.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So I'm actually gonna ask you to tell people about your podcast because you've now actually started that back up. And
I have.
You've had a little bit of a hiccup of getting back into your podcast, so
yeah, it's going slow, but it's gonna get there.
So where can people listen and watch your podcast called, and all the details?
So right now my podcast is really it's a video podcast on YouTube with Baker Rangers Pod. If you look that up on YouTube, the podcast is called Technical Difficulties Podcast because whenever I try to do anything, I always get stuck with technical difficulties, and if people are on with me, they get the technical difficulties as well. It's my curse and my superpower. So you can find it there. I don't have any episodes starting back up because I lost with my normal podcast, the podcast that I had last year and a half ago. For some reason, the website just deleted my profile. So those podcasts are out there on the podcast, but I cannot use it to add more. So I'm starting over. So I do have podcasts on my main Baker Rangers YouTube from before whenever I did put out some of the video ones. But I put one out there for the 30th anniversary one that I actually recorded, like it's my second ever recording where me and Billy and Jim were talking about the original movie. But I know I'm going long-winded on this. I tend to do that sometimes. But I only have like maybe 2 episodes. But a third should be coming out soon, either before this comes out or after. It was supposed to come out today on this recording, but I've been having some sniffle issues, so I've not been in the mood to do a lot of editing. So, but anywho, YouTube, Baker Rangers Pod. That's what I was trying to say.
Yep, absolutely awesome. I was really happy to see when you kind of told us all that, like, you managed to get it sorted. And you got your episode with Jared, the host of If You Give It Out a Podcast, which is the whole reason why this podcast exists. And of course, everybody, don't forget to check out the podcast platform, subscribe to the Tiger Nexus YouTube channel. We are over halfway to 100 subscribers, which is awesome. I am trying to promote the podcast more on TikTok and things. Check out the Linktree, which is Linktree/TigerTiger777 for all the other content. And of course, Ben will return for more movie dumpster dive. I actually have an idea for the genre for the next video one, so I'm very looking forward to talking to Ben about that after this recording. And of course, we love you all, and Roar of Passion, everybody, and we shall see you guys in the next one.
What you have just listened to is a product created by the Three Ranger Bros Studio.
Hosted by 3 cosplaying fathers who
happen to be massive geeks of all sorts of fandoms.
They are Mark, the Red Cornish Ranger.
Cosplay Dude 637.
And Ty Tiger.
The studio covers different types of YouTube videos, TikToks, podcasts, and live streams.
If you wish to find out who cosplays who, the YouTube channel, the TikTok accounts, and the podcasts, and all of the other social media platforms,
please go to the 3rangerbrostudios.com.